Throughout history, China has changed drastically. From fattening up through the Silk Road trade to being conquered by the Mongolians. From the British occupation of Hong Kong to the Chinese economic miracle. Whenever China became weak, it came back with a vengeance. Some even might say wickedness. In his book, International Politics and the Search for Peace, Masataka Kosaka stated that wickedness comes from weakness. He argued that countries that are facing challenges to their economies or sociopolitical spheres are much more prone to war. To a point, that is true. We only need to look at North Korea and its threat of nuclear annihilation to know that Mr. Kosaka was onto something. However, we are not discussing North Korea here. We're discussing a nation that has the potential to actually carry out those threats, regardless of how weak it gets. We are talking about China. China has had most of the world in a stranglehold. However, its control may be slipping. With declining birth rates, an eroding economy, socio-political problems and international pressure hammering down on the once mighty empire, it is uncertain how China will react. Will its weakness truly lead to wickedness, or will we see it transform into something else? One thing is for certain, things may never be the same again. It has to be noted that Kosaka was referring to the newly independent Asian and African states of the 1960s when this book was published. However, if we look back on the history of China itself, we can see that it holds true for it as well. China is home to one of the most ancient civilizations in the world. It was quite ahead of its time, and its goods were traded at premium prices across Asia, Africa, and Europe. It had a monopoly on silk and had paper money well before the rest of the world caught on. Of course, even golden age is finite, and slowly, as time passed, the once great Chinese empire deteriorated. Multiple dynasties of rulers rose and fell, each seeking to be the one true ruler of this vast land. Each of them became part of history. In that time, what we know as China was separated into multiple different kingdoms. Perhaps one of the most existential threats China faced was during the Mongol invasions that came after the 11th century. They conquered almost all of China at their height. However, even they passed into the history books. That wasn't the end of the challenges for China. As of the 19th century, European powers, especially the British Empire, expressed a great interest in China. Attracted by the prospects of exclusive and valuable goods such as tea, silk, porcelain, and many other items, the British began colonizing the state. China at that time was isolated and as such was too weak to fight off the British incursions. The Chinese did not have advanced enough technology to match the British artillery, and so were colonized. While the British did not take control of the Chinese mainland, Hong Kong was under British occupation from 1841 until 1997, when it was handed back to the People's Republic of China. China was the punching bag of Europe and Japan for much of the time before the Second World War. It was technologically backward, and its weakness was seen as an opportunity for foreign powers. However, in the 1950s, China's rapid industrialization began, but failed as political mismanagement ruined all that Mao Zedong could accomplish. However, after Mao died in 1976, money started pouring in from all over the world, attracted by affordable labor and low rent costs. This was the beginning of China's economic miracle, and made the country one of the world's fastest growing economies. However, has China reached a peak? Is the only way forward down? China's socio-political situation has been rather unstable as of late. Is it a temporary downturn, or does this trend show that China is weakening? The recent population decline might just be a taste for things to come. This weakness will likely stimulate Japan and the European powers as it did before the Second World War. China's problems are not just coming from the outside. Internally, the country is becoming like a powder keg. There has been a lot of dissatisfaction with the corrupt government officials in the country. Mass media censorship and unfair treatment have led to protests against local governments, and the ruling party has reacted in kind. Xi Jinping, the leader of the Chinese Communist Party who rule the country, has been in power since 2013. Initially, his approach to modernizing China, such as the Belt and Road Initiative, received much appreciation and generated results. However, since COVID-19 and the successive economic downturns, China's fortunes are flowing down the drain apparently. The people are not happy. The government is not happy. The Western powers that covet China's resources are not happy. As we said in the beginning, this weakness is more than likely to lead to wickedness. In many ways, it already has. China's economy has been considered a miracle for decades. However, now it seems that it's snapping back to reality with full force. Data from China's National Bureau of Statistics showed the economy grew 4.5% in the first quarter of 2023 and 6.3% in the second, with gross domestic product up just 0.8% in April to June from the previous quarter after a 2.2% expansion in the first quarter. There are numerous causes behind this. One of these is, of course, USA prohibiting investments in the sensitive technology sector of China. China was gravely concerned about this order, and this has been a massive blow to the technology sector. US pressure has made forming relations with China all the more difficult for countries. It seems you can either play ball with China or the USA, not both. That's not all. China's consumer sector fell into deflation in 2023. Concerns are rising that China is now entering an era of slow economic growth, similar to Japan's lost decades. Stagnation is coupled with rising unemployment. China's official urban jobless rate has hovered around 5.2% in recent months, compared with the 6.4% jobless rate recorded in the Eurozone in June. Youth unemployment in China, though, is at a record high of more than 20%. Fiscal and monetary responses to China's challenges have not done much to resolve the deflating economy. Since late 2020, real interest rates have been relatively flat, even increasing over several quarters when the consumer price index fell faster than the policy rate. The question remains, as China wanes, what power will take over to become the workshop of the world? China's weakness may seem like an opportunity for many countries to take their place, earn foreign investments, and skyrocket their economy. Foremost among these countries is India. India has set its sights on replacing China as the global manufacturing hub. In June of 2023, the country launched a $6.6 billion incentive program to boost electronic manufacturing in the country. Furthermore, India's close relationship with the USA also helps, but so far, these measures have only generated modest gains. Another country that is one of the main beneficiaries of China's weakness is Vietnam. The Southeast nation is absorbing much of the manufacturing capacity of China. It enjoys stable politics and has affordable alongside liberalized trade policies. This makes it an attractive investment destination. However, in a political sense, China's weakness means that its economic and political rivals will become more powerful. In the South China Sea, Japan is slowly trying to gain control while China's internal disputes keep it from being proactive. The same is true for Taiwan and the protests there. As we're seeing, China is losing ground in a Cold War in more ways than one. This could potentially result in violent reactions from the CCP. The government has already cracked down on the protesters, but in time, as things become more dire, this could be extended beyond its borders as well. Perhaps Taiwan is in for more trouble than it already is. Perhaps Japan will receive something more than just strongly worded condemnation. But the question remains, can China actually carry out those threats? It seems that there are a lot of fires for China to put out and not enough water. Perhaps the biggest fire that China needs to put out isn't in the South China Sea or Taiwan. it isn't even within the country. It is across the Pacific Ocean in America. The relations between China and the USA are on a dangerous trajectory. There is no trust between the two nations, and the situation is worsening by the week. When you realize that there are two of the most powerful states in the world, which happen to be nuclear powers, are at a stalemate, it's apparent how things can quickly deteriorate. In early March, China's new foreign minister, Xi Gang, said that the relations with the USA have left a rational path. The minister also warned of conflict if the USA doesn't hit the brake. The conflict between the USA and China has had economic ramifications in the form of tariffs and trade agreements, as well as raised concerns regarding national security due to alleged spying. It seems that China is already becoming desperate as things escalated between it and the US after US forces shot down an alleged Chinese spy balloon. This incident reignited tensions, leading Secretary of State Antony Blinken to cancel his trip to Beijing. There are also concerns regarding China's support of Russia in its war against Ukraine. This conflict and China's role in it has split the world in two. We all know what happens when the world is divided into two blocks, right? Except now, they're armed to the teeth with nuclear explosives. It seems that China considers Taiwan to be its red line and will not tolerate anyone crossing it. The Taiwan question is at the very core of China's core interests in the region. While the US and China seem in agreement outwardly, things are not so smooth on the inside. After all, there have been protests calling for democracy in Taiwan that they pushed down. It's quite likely that the USA will use Taiwan as a puppet state to offset China's interests in the region. While the US government has not expressed any intentions to do so, we have to remember that things like these have happened before, and they weren't always announced. Once China feels its sovereignty being threatened, it may react harshly and swiftly. It may throw the world off balance and change things for the worst. The future, as ever, is uncertain. While a lot can be said about China's eroding economy, political pressure, and internal disruptions, it cannot be denied that it is an important figure in international politics. Whether it is international intervention in times of conflict or climate change action, China's vote carries a lot of weight. However, as the geopolitical situation shifts and China finds itself losing its relevance in the global sphere, it may react quickly and swiftly. When it does, will the world be ready? Will China's weakness really lead to wickedness? Or will China find a way to fix its problems and find a miracle twice? That remains to be seen.